And welcome back. And let me bring in our panel. Neil obviously said more, and I think more eloquently than any of us could have. But can somebody explain to me, I don't care where you stand on gun control, what was the governor thinking? It was just so small, petty, and ugly.
This is why, Richard, I tell you that he will never be president of the United States, ever. He never had a shot. I don't care how delusional he may be. I don't care what some poll shows. What the governor did in this case was a political calculation with an eye towards the race for presidency. He's trying to appease the base, and since he's already reelected in New Jersey, it's not a lose situation for him. But to throw salt on the wound, I have to tell you, sitting in the green room with this father, I almost feel, he's a great man, I almost feel a little uncomfortable because I don't know what to say to him. He lost his child. And the governor of the state of New Jersey uses words like that. He will never be president of the, it's all an illusion. It's over for Chris Christie.
Well, you can add Sandy Hook to a long list of political opponents of Chris Christie that he's done this with. I mean, public sector workers, teachers. I mean, how many times have we seen this in Chris Christie's career?
But Andrew, don't you think in those situations, while they were risky with a chance of blowback, there was a sentiment of the population that said, oh yeah, the union guys or the teachers, they're getting it. This case, I just don't understand what constituency you're appealing to. There's one thing to veto it, but to use multiple descriptors of these people as opportunists, there's no political upside to that.
3 letters, NRA.
Supporters of
the NRA say those same things about Sandy Hook parents.
Yep.
They're cashing in on this tragedy, or they're making political hay of it. Nobody at this table, I don't think, agrees with that point of view, but there's an audience for it, and Chris Christie was playing to it.
But I'll tell you, just from a political standpoint, what I think is going on is as a result of Bridgegate, he lost his top lieutenants, the top people that have been serving him. This is a huge political miscalculation on his part. And again, as Neil so eloquently said, not if he opposes it for reasons, but as you mentioned, in the way in which he did this.
And he was expected to veto it, so that didn't come as a surprise. It's what happened after.
And in my mind, that's because he has lost the key people who have worked with him, got him elected and then re-elected, and it is very difficult to move on from that. And this is, I said a political miscalculation. It is more than that. I agree with Dominic. How he could say this, he owes these families an apology. If he has a real reason for vetoing this, he should have said it, and he should have done so respectfully.
It's so graceless.
You have a father sitting here saying, I'd respect his decision if he'd give us the respect of voicing why he did it, and the governor doesn't say that.
It'll be interesting to see if an apology is
he
forthcoming
should
for the governor.
He should watch this interview and he should apologize.
We're going to take you back in time here, and not just for the titillation of the Lewinsky affair, but more about what had changed or didn't change about the way we not only look at American politics, but also the way that we cover it. Remember this?
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people.
Whenever they wag that finger. All right, anyway, that of course, Bill Clinton denying the affair with the former White House intern back in '98. We all know how the story ended. Lewinsky, she has spoken out about the affair several times following the scandal, and now after a decade of silence, she's speaking out again about the affair, and this time she's talking to National Geographic. And in the documentary, Lewinsky says she was interrogated by the FBI and calls the entire ordeal humiliating.
To be in the vortex of this media maelstrom was quite alarming and frightening. It was confusing. I think a lot, too, had to do with the fact that I was a woman. I had felt there should be some sort of an apology to my parents. I was a young girl when I started as an intern. He and I had both made mistakes, but he really, truly was more of the adult in this situation.
We all know the story. Nobody needs the reminders, but how do you think, we'll do the coverage stuff, but how do you think politics, expectations of politics from the American public, what are career enders and not anymore, What do you think the impact of that was, if anything, on how we look at politics and politicians today?
You know, I think it desensitized us a lot to so many things that have happened afterwards. Certainly there have been scandalous affairs and we've heard about them, but you know, after you have the President of the United States doing what he did in the White House and the Oval Office with this intern, there is no excuse. You know, it is, you know, it has this desensitizing effect. And, you know, I have to say, one of your not so favorite people, Rand Paul, who brought this up recently, I happen to agree with him on this. You cannot be a boss in a situation. I don't care if she agreed or not. She works for you. She's an intern. You have parents sending their children to intern in the White House. There's no excuse for this. But
who thinks it was acceptable? I mean, I don't know someone who thinks it was acceptable behavior. I mean, now whether or not he should have been impeached or anything, we can have debates about that, but it's abhorrent behavior. It's horrible.
It's abhorrent, but if you look at now, he was just in the latest Quinnipiac poll rated as one of the best presidents since World War II. And certainly from a policy perspective, I can see that. But where is the treatment of women? Where is the treatment of people who work for you? Where is the issue of sexual harassment? I mean, these all come into play. So I do think there are people who have forgiven this, and this has been one of the things that people have said from the right for so long.
I remember when this was first reported, right? I said, if this is true, he's done, right? And I think the overwhelming sentiment was, a president with an intern in the... No, it can't be true. But if this is true, he's gone.
I mean, I understand, but I think
and that was prevailing sentiment
honestly,
at the time.
Richard,
I remember that.
And I'm going to say something that may not be too politically popular, but I think there are many of us that have assumed these types of things have gone on for years with American presidents. It just hasn't been reported by the press. Now, this president was out there publicly in a way that we had never seen before, but I think, I don't know if he was excused, but I think America wanted to look the other way because it was good times for the country.
See, Andrew, I remember it a little different. I think the reason why in the end he got the pass after lying repeatedly and throwing people under the bus to cover his you-know-what here, and obviously was the Livingstons and the rest of the world. The loudest vocal critics that came out against him were seen as hypocrites in this. If there were honest brokers that came off as genuinely, a lot of Democrats had huge problems with him and vocally took him to task. But it was the ones, the Gingriches of the world, who had their own moral baggage. I think that's why he was able to skate as much as anything else.
I think a lot of people looked at it as a terrible decision and a terrible act, but not an impeachable offense. And I think it was an overplay by his political opponents. Yeah, it was terrible, but it shouldn't have been kicked out of office, or they shouldn't have tried to kick him out of office for it. Jeannie, you mentioned the poll that has him as one of the better presidents since the end of the Second World War, but the other poll number that jumps out at me is the state of the presidency. The people, it's at its lowest state of trust that we can imagine. The Monica stuff was a bookend to Watergate in terms of eroding the trust in the presidency and how the public views it. With Nixon, it was his public acts and the things that he did for political advantage. Clinton was very personal, but it was, if there was any veil or any mythology left about the presidency, it was eroded by those two acts. And so, you know, I'm not sure we'll ever be at a point where people respect the presidency the way they used to.
Do you think we cover in the media differently after this, where, think about it, what scandal really is there anymore other than graft theft, you know, that will get you summarily, I mean, you're going to resign that day, other than stealing. I don't know if there's a sex scandal anymore that'll really make you leave office. I think about it. I mean, I wouldn't have said that before the Lewinsky affair, but now...
My mind can think of some, Richard, but I'm not going to go there.
Tell that to Jim McGreevey or Elliot Spitzer or Mark
But
Sanford.
McGreevey, if he didn't pay off Golan Sapel, right, with taxpayer dollars to be, you know, his you-know-what, he might have survived. I remember polls saying he could have survived. I just think the bar went down after this. For good or for bad, people can make up their own minds. But I'm just saying, it's covered differently now.
But can I just say, I think what's so interesting about what Lewinsky is saying now is this: she isn't as angry at Clinton at all as she is about the way in which she was treated by the media, by the star people, by the investigators, by the Republicans.
She deserved an apology or
I think that may be a little bit far-fetched, but you know, this storm that surrounded this young girl when this happened. I mean, you know, that in her mind those are the villains, not Clinton. And so when you talk about why he wasn't impeached, I think the American public agree it's not an impeachable offense perhaps, but also there were so many villains in this story and so many people out for their own reasons that had nothing to do with the abuse of this young woman. And so in my mind, that's a huge uncovered story.
Yeah, the Ken Starrs, the Linda Tripps out of it, there just seemed to be so much political motivations behind it that it made it easy to, I think, spread the blame around instead of just focusing it at the president at the time. But
Richard, this president was well liked, and you know him, I know him. He has a great personality, and at the end of the day, that's why he survived this.
And also, as you mentioned, because the economy was strong and he had done a decent job as president, and that matters.
Oh, I know we got to break real quickly. You mentioned before what Rand Paul had to say. Do you think...
I just mentioned it because you love him, Richard.
Absolutely. Big poster on the wall for me. But no, do you think the name Lewinsky even comes up in the campaign as more than just a sidebar if, in fact, Hillary runs as we expect?
Of course. If you're
you think the public still cares?
It's throwing mud up at the wall, hoping that you can get her to fall into the trap. But she's way too smart for that. She will not fall into a Monica Lewinsky trap. And frankly, Monica Lewinsky's 15 minutes of fame are done. I mean, I understand the abuse of the woman and all of that argument, but I contend she played a role in this. I contend she seduced an American president, so she's responsible as well.
I agree with you that she doesn't fall into that trap. Hillary doesn't fall. Do you think Bill falls into that trap? Because he'll get the question too when Hillary campaigns.
No, I think that they're going to have Bill count to 10 this time. He's already made a few mistakes on the campaign trail, but he's in the Cuomo bag. Count to 10. Don't say what's on your mind.
That's the more likely one, though. That's
and
the more likely
it helps
one.
the Clintons that this is out now, that Vanity Fair and now National Geographic. I mean, this is best for Hillary Clinton. It's out now. She addressed it in her book. How much more can you say about it?
Kind of like Benghazi. Get it out.
Get it out,
14,
answer it, and there's nothing more to be said.
Okay, coming up next, everyone, taking center stage after fighting off media criticism back in May. New York City's First Lady, is she ready to be a media target again here? Well, speculation that Chirlane McCray wants to write a memoir with, trust me, a few very interesting storylines. This is a good move for her and for New York City's first family. We'll talk about that after this.